The alarms had been ringing for 3 hours before the Kelvari ships finally docked at Galactic Unity Station. Yuna stood at the observation window and watched the massive vessels attached to the station like dark mountains finding a home in the stars. Around her, the corridor had emptied. Everyone had run away, everyone except her. She was not brave. She was simply curious. The Kelvari were known across 12 star systems as the most terrifying warriors in the galaxy. Their bodies stood 8 meters tall. Their skin was covered in scales harder than ship armor. They had 4 arms, each one strong enough to tear metal apart. Their eyes burned like molten gold, and their voices shook the ground when they spoke. For 300 years, other species had feared them. Wars had been fought against them and lost. Treaties had been signed in terror. Now they were here for peace talks. Yuna found that interesting. She worked as a xenobiologist on the station. Her job was to study alien species, to understand their bodies and their behaviors. Most of her colleagues studied from a safe distance. They watched recordings. They read reports. But Yuna believed you could not truly understand a species unless you met them face to face. Her friend Taiho found her at the window. He was an engineer, a practical man who fixed broken systems and avoided broken situations. His face was pale with worry. "Yuna, what are you doing here?" he asked. "Everyone has moved to the safe sectors. The Kelvari are coming through this section." "I know," she said. "I want to see them." Taiho grabbed her arm. "Are you crazy? These are monsters." "I have seen the videos from the Helian War. They tore through armies like paper. One of them killed 200 soldiers in a single battle." "They were at war," Yuna said calmly. "We are not. That does not matter to creatures like them. Please, come with me." But before Yuna could answer, the corridor shook. Heavy footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead. The sound was like thunder rolling through the metal walls. Taiho's face went white. He looked at Yuna one last time, then turned and ran. Yuna did not run. She turned toward the sound and waited. The Kelvari warrior appeared at the end of the corridor. He had to bend his body to fit through the doorway. When he stood straight again, his head nearly touched the ceiling. His scales were dark gray like storm clouds. His 4 arms hung at his sides, each one thick with muscle. His golden eyes swept the corridor and found her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Yuna had studied many species in her career. She had learned to read body language across dozens of different forms. And what she saw in this massive warrior was not aggression. It was surprise. He had expected to find an empty corridor. Instead, he found a small human woman looking up at him with calm eyes. She smiled. "Hello," she said. "Welcome to Unity Station." The warrior stared at her. His golden eyes blinked slowly. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "You do not run." "No," Yuna agreed. "Should I?" "All others run." "I am not all others." The warrior tilted his massive head. He seemed to be studying her the same way she was studying him. His nostrils flared as he took in her scent. His eyes moved across her small form, perhaps measuring her, perhaps trying to understand why she was not afraid. "I am Vortan," he said finally. "Warrior of the Kelvari, 3rd Legion of the Iron Mountains." "I am Yuna," she replied. "Xenobiologist. I study different species to understand them better." "You study us?" "I would like to, if you would let me." Vortan made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been confusion. "No one wishes to be near us. They send diplomats who tremble. They send soldiers who reach for weapons they are too afraid to use. But you—" He leaned down, bringing his massive face closer to hers. His golden eyes were like twin suns. "You are different." Yuna did not step back. She looked into those eyes and saw something she had not expected. Behind the warrior's fierce appearance, behind the scales and the muscles and the terrifying size, She saw loneliness. She saw centuries of being feared and hated. She saw a creature who had never known anything but war. "Maybe I am different," she said softly. "Or maybe I just see things that others miss." More footsteps echoed behind Vortan. Two more Kelvari warriors appeared, both nearly as large as him. They stopped when they saw Yuna. "Vortan," one of them growled. "Why do you speak with this small creature? The diplomats wait in the main hall." Vortan straightened but did not take his eyes off Yuna. "This one did not run," he said. "She welcomed us." The other warriors exchanged looks of confusion. One of them stepped forward and leaned down to examine Yuna more closely. She could smell his breath, hot and metallic. His eyes were not as bright as Vortan's, more like dull copper. "Strange," the warrior muttered. "Is she broken? Perhaps her fear response does not work." "I am not broken," Yuna said calmly. "I am curious. There is a difference." The warrior pulled back as if she had bitten him. Vortan made that strange sound again, and this time Yuna was certain it was a laugh. "Come," Vortan said to his companions. "We must meet the diplomats." He began to move past Yuna, his massive body filling the corridor. But as he passed, he paused and looked down at her one more time. "I will remember you, Yuna, the human who did not run." Then they were gone, their thunderous footsteps fading into the distance. Yuna stood alone in the corridor. Her heart was beating fast now, faster than it had been during the entire encounter. She pressed her hand to her chest and took a deep breath. She had met many alien species before. She had faced creatures with claws and fangs and poison, but she had never felt anything like this. There was something about Vortan, something in those golden eyes that called to her. 2 hours later, she received a message from the diplomatic office. The Kelvari delegation had made an unusual request. They wanted a specific human assigned as their personal liaison for the duration of the peace talks. They wanted Yuna. Taiho found her reading the message and shook his head in disbelief. "You cannot accept this. You will be alone with them for weeks. What if they hurt you?" Yuna looked at her friend and smiled. "They will not hurt me." "How can you possibly know that?" She thought about golden eyes and lonely hearts. She thought about a warrior who had noticed that she did not run. "I just know," she said. "Trust me." She sent her acceptance before Taiho could argue further. That night, as the station settled into an uneasy sleep, Yuna lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow she would begin her work with the Kelvari. Tomorrow she would see Vortan again. She did not know why that thought made her heart beat faster. She did not know why she could not stop thinking about the way he had looked at her. But she knew one thing for certain. Something important had begun today. Something that would change her life forever. She could feel it in her bones, in her blood, in every part of her being. She closed her eyes and dreamed of golden light. 5 days had passed since Yuna became the liaison for the Kelvari delegation. 5 days of walking beside giants. 5 days of watching others flee in terror while she remained calm. 5 days of learning more about Vortan than any human had ever learned about his kind. He was not what the stories said. The galaxy knew the Kelvari as destroyers. They knew them as monsters who burned worlds and crushed armies. But Yuna saw something different. She saw how carefully Vortan moved through the station corridors, always aware of his massive size, always trying not to break things or frighten people more than necessary. She saw how he paused to look at the flowers in the hydroponic gardens, his golden eyes soft with wonder. She saw how he listened when she spoke, really listened, as if her words were precious things. Today she was showing him the station's garden dome. It was her favorite place on Unity Station, a large sphere filled with plants from 100 different worlds. Artificial sunlight streamed through the transparent walls. The air smelled of flowers and growing things. Vortan stood in the center of the dome, his head tilted back, his 4 arms hanging loose at his sides. He looked like a statue, perfectly still. But Yuna knew he was not frozen. He was overwhelmed. "My world has no plants like these," he said quietly. "Our soil is rock and ash. Our sky is gray with smoke from the forges. We grow nothing soft or beautiful." Yuna walked to stand beside him. Her head barely reached his knee. "Do you miss having beautiful things?" Vortan was silent for a long moment. "I did not know I was missing them until now." They walked through the garden together. Yuna named the flowers for him. She told him which ones smelled sweetest, which ones bloomed only once a year, which ones came from Earth. Vortan listened to everything. Sometimes he would bend down, his massive body folding like a mountain kneeling, just to look more closely at a tiny blossom. Other people avoided the garden while they were there. Yuna saw them approaching, then turning away when they spotted the giant HFY warrior among the flowers. She saw mothers pulling their children close. She saw men reaching for weapons they were not supposed to carry. Vortan saw them too. Each time someone fled, something in his eyes dimmed a little more. They were sitting on a bench near a fountain when the worst moment came. A small girl, maybe 5 years old, had wandered away from her parents. She came around a corner and saw Vortan. For 1 second, her eyes went wide with curiosity, just like Yuna's had been on that first day. Then she screamed. The sound was high and sharp, filled with pure terror. The girl turned and ran, crying for her mother. Her screams echoed through the dome long after she disappeared. Vortan did not move. He sat on the bench like a statue, his golden eyes fixed on the spot where the child had stood. His 4 hands were clenched into fists. Yuna reached out and touched his arm. His scales were warm and rough under her fingers. "I am sorry," she said. "Why do you apologize? You did nothing wrong. I am sorry that people cannot see you the way I see you." Vortan turned his head to look at her. His golden eyes were dark with pain. "And how do you see me, little human? As a curiosity, a subject for your studies, a monster that you are brave enough to approach?" "No," Yuna said firmly. "I see you as someone who is gentle when he thinks no one is watching. I see someone who looks at flowers with wonder. I see someone who has been alone for a very long time." Vortan stared at her. The fountain bubbled softly behind them. The artificial sun began to dim, creating a false twilight in the garden dome. Stars appeared on the transparent walls, projected images of distant galaxies. "In 300 years of war," Vortan said slowly, "no one has ever spoken to me this way. Maybe no one took the time to really look at you. Or maybe there is nothing good to see." Yuna shook her head. "That is not true. I know it is not true." Vortan rose from the bench. His massive form blocked out the false stars. He looked down at Yuna with an expression she could not read. Then he asked the question that had been building inside him since the first moment they met. "Are you afraid of me, human?" The words hung in the air between them. Yuna could feel their weight. She understood that this was not a casual question. This was something deeper. This was Vortan asking if he was truly the monster that everyone believed him to be. She stood up from the bench. She walked closer to him until she was standing directly at his feet, looking up at his massive form. She could feel the heat radiating from his body. She could hear the deep rhythm of his breathing. "No," she said. "I am not afraid of you, Vortan." "Then what do you feel when you look at me?" Yuna smiled. The answer came easily, as natural as breathing. "I adore you." Vortan went completely still. His golden eyes widened. His 4 hands trembled at his sides. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I adore your gentleness," Yuna continued. I adore the way you look at flowers. I adore the way you listen when I talk, like my words actually matter. I adore the sadness in your eyes because it shows me that you feel things deeply. I adore you, Vortan. All of you. The warrior and the gentle soul hiding inside. For a long moment, Vortan simply stared at her. The garden was silent except for the soft bubbling of the fountain. The false stars twinkled on the dome walls. The air smelled of flowers and possibility. Then Vortan turned and walked away. He did not run. His kind did not run from anything. But he moved quickly, his massive form disappearing through the garden paths until Yuna could no longer see him. The thunderous sound of his footsteps faded into silence. Yuna stood alone among the flowers. She did not cry. She did not regret her words. She had spoken the truth, and she would never apologize for that. But her heart ached in a way she had never felt before. She stayed in the garden for another hour, watching the false stars move across the dome. She thought about Vortan's face when she had said those words. She had expected many reactions. Confusion, maybe. Anger, possibly. But what she had seen was something else entirely. She had seen hope. And hope, she knew, could be the most terrifying thing of all. When she finally returned to her quarters, she found Taiho waiting outside her door. His face was worried. "The Kelvari warrior," he said. "Vortan. He returned to his ship and has not come out. The other delegates are concerned. They said he seemed upset." Yuna nodded slowly. "He needs time." Time for what? She looked at her friend and smiled sadly. Time to understand that he deserves to be adored. Taiho shook his head in confusion, but Yuna did not explain further. She went into her quarters and sat by the window. Outside, she could see the dark shape of the Kelvari ship attached to the station. Somewhere inside that ship, a warrior was struggling with words no one had ever said to him before. Yuna pressed her hand to the cold glass and whispered into the silence. "I meant every word, Vortan. When you are ready to believe that, I will be here." The stars continued their endless dance outside her window, and Yuna waited. Yuna continued her work as the Kelvari liaison. But now she dealt only with the other warriors. They were polite to her in their rough way, but they were not Vortan. Their eyes did not hold the same gentleness. Their voices did not make her heart beat faster. She asked about him once, a warrior named Krath, who had copper-colored eyes and scars across his scales, simply shook his head. "Vortan keeps to his quarters," Krath said. "He speaks to no one. This is not normal for him. He is our strongest fighter, our most honored warrior, but now he sits alone in the dark." "Is he sick?" Yuna asked, worried. Krath made a sound like grinding stones. "Not sick in body. Perhaps sick in something else. Something we do not have words for." Yuna knew exactly what that something was. She had caused it with 3 simple words. "I adore you." Words that seemed so natural to her had shattered something inside Vortan. Taiho found her in the station library that evening. She was surrounded by data screens, reading everything she could find about the Kelvari. "You are not eating," he said, sitting down across from her. "You are not sleeping. What are you doing?" "Research," Yuna replied without looking up. "Research on what?" "On why the word adoration would hurt someone so deeply." Taiho leaned back in his chair. "Yuna, you need to let this go. The Kelvari are not like us. They do not feel things the way we do. They are warriors. They understand violence and honor and duty. They do not understand whatever this is." "You are wrong," Yuna said quietly. She turned one of the screens toward him. "Look at this. 3,000 years ago, the Kelvari were not warriors at all. They were builders and artists. They created beautiful structures that still stand today. They wrote poetry. They sang songs." Taiho looked at the screen. His eyebrows rose. "What happened?" "War happened. Another species attacked their world. The Kelvari had to change to survive. They had to become hard and cold and fierce. Over generations, they forgot who they used to be. They taught their children that softness was weakness. They taught them that love was a lie. They became the monsters the galaxy needed them to be. That is sad, Tai-Ho admitted. It is more than sad. It is a tragedy. Yuna closed the screen and looked at her friend. Vortan has been taught his entire life that he has no value except as a weapon. He has been taught that no one could ever care for him, only fear him. And then I came along and said that I adore him. I broke something inside him, Tai-Ho. I broke the wall he built around his heart. Is that not a good thing? It would be, if he knew how to handle it. But he does not. He has never felt this before. He does not know what to do with these emotions. Tai-Ho was quiet for a moment. What will you do? Yuna had been thinking about this for 3 days. She had considered giving Vortan more time. She had considered forgetting the whole thing and returning to her normal work, but neither option felt right. I am going to write him a letter, she said. Tai-Ho blinked. A letter? Like, on paper? Yes, I learned that the Kelvari value physical gifts. Something you create with your own hands means more to them than any digital message. A letter written by hand on real paper with real ink. It will show him that I put thought and effort into my words. And what will you write? Yuna smiled softly. I will explain what adoration means to humans. I will tell him that it is not a trick or a trap. I will tell him that he deserves to be cared for, even if he does not believe it yet. That night, Yuna sat at her desk with a blank sheet of paper. Paper was rare on space stations. It had to be imported from planets, and it cost more than most people could afford. But Yuna had been saving a few sheets for something special. Now she knew what that something was. She picked up her pen and began to write. Dear Vortan, she began, I know you are confused. I know my words frightened you. I did not mean to cause you pain. Please let me explain what I meant. Where I come from, adoration is a gift we give freely. It does not demand anything in return. It does not come with conditions or expectations. When I said I adore you, I was not trying to trap you or trick you. I was simply telling you the truth about what I feel when I look at you. She paused, thinking carefully about her next words. I have studied many species in my life. I have seen creatures of all shapes and sizes, but I have never met anyone like you, Vortan. You have been taught that you are only valuable as a warrior. You have been taught that your worth comes from your strength and your fighting ability. But I see so much more in you. I see curiosity. I see gentleness. I see a heart that has been buried under centuries of pain and loneliness. I see someone who wants to be more than a weapon, but does not know how. You asked me if I was afraid of you. The answer is no. I will never be afraid of you, but I understand if you are afraid of me, not of my body, which is small and weak compared to yours, but of what I represent. I represent the possibility that the world could be different, that you could be different. That is a frightening thing. Believe me, I know. Yuna wrote for 2 hours. She told Vortan about human love, about how they gave their hearts to others even knowing they might be hurt. She told him about her own fears and hopes. She told him that she was willing to wait as long as it took for him to understand. When she finished, her hand was cramped and her eyes were tired. But the letter was complete. 3 pages of her best handwriting, filled with truth and care. She folded the pages carefully and sealed them with a drop of wax. Then she walked through the quiet station corridors to the section where the Kelvari ship was docked. 2 warriors stood guard at the entrance. They looked down at her with suspicious eyes. "Human!" one of them growled. "What do you want?" "I have a message for Vortan," Yuna said. She held up the letter. Please give this to him." The warriors exchanged glances. "He does not wish to speak with anyone." "He does not have to speak. He only has to read." After a long moment, one of the warriors took the letter from her hand. His clawed fingers were surprisingly gentle. "I will give it to him," the warrior said, "but I cannot promise he will read it." "That is all I ask," Una replied. She bowed slightly, a gesture of respect she had learned from her research. "Thank you." She walked back to her quarters without looking back. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. She had done everything she could. Now it was up to Vortan. Hours later, in a dark room on the Kelvari ship, Vortan sat alone. The letter lay in his massive hands, the paper looking tiny and fragile against his scaled fingers. He read it once, then twice, then 3 times. When he finished the third reading, something wet fell onto the paper. Vortan touched his face and found moisture on his fingers. He had not cried since he was a child. He had forgotten that it was possible. He held the letter to his chest and sat in the darkness for a very long time. Then he rose and went to find Elder Serac. Elder Serac was the oldest living Kelvari. His scales had faded from dark gray to pale silver over the centuries. His golden eyes were dimmer than the younger warriors, but they held a wisdom that came only from long life and deep thought. He sat in the ship's meditation chamber, a room of bare metal and flickering torches. When Vortan entered, Serac did not seem surprised. "You have come with questions," the elder said. "I can see them burning in your eyes." Vortan knelt before the elder. Even kneeling, he was massive, but in this moment he felt small. He felt like a child seeking answers from a parent. "There is a human," Vortan began. "The small female who does not run. Yes, I have heard about her." "She said—" Vortan struggled with the words. "She said she adores me. She wrote me a letter explaining what that means. But I do not understand, Elder. Why would anyone feel such a thing for a creature like me?" Serac was quiet for a long moment. The torchlight flickered across his ancient scales. Finally, he spoke. "Let me tell you a story, young one, a story our people have forgotten." Vortan listened. 3,000 years ago, our ancestors were not warriors. They were creators. They built towers that touched the clouds. They carved mountains into sculptures that could be seen from space. They wrote songs so beautiful that other species traveled across the galaxy just to hear them. "I know this history," Vortan said. "We were weak then. We were prey." "Were we?" Serac shook his head slowly. "Or were we simply different? When the Markorians attacked our world, we had a choice. We could maintain our peaceful ways and die, or we could transform ourselves into something harder. We chose survival. It was the right choice. Perhaps. But in becoming warriors, we lost something precious. We lost the ability to create beauty. We lost the ability to feel deeply without shame. We lost... Serac paused. We lost the ability to be adored. Vortan stared at the elder. "What do you mean?" "Adoration requires vulnerability. It requires showing your true self to another and trusting them not to hurt you. Our ancestors knew this. They gave their hearts freely and received hearts in return. But we warriors have forgotten how. We have built walls around our hearts so thick that no one can get through." Serac leaned forward. "But this human, this small female, she sees through your walls, does she not?" Vortan thought about Yuna's eyes. Calm, curious, unafraid. "Yes," he whispered. "She sees me in a way no one ever has." "Then perhaps she sees what we used to be. What we could be again." "But how?" Vortan asked, and there was desperation in his voice. "How do I respond to such a gift? I have no training for this. I have no experience with softness or gentleness. I only know how to fight. I only know how to destroy. Serac reached out and placed a weathered hand on Vortan's shoulder. You are wrong, young one. I have watched you with this human. I have seen how carefully you move around her. I have seen how you listen to her every word. That is not the behavior of a mindless destroyer. That is the behavior of someone who cares. But I do not know how to care properly. Then learn. Let her teach you. Let yourself be vulnerable just once. See what happens. Vortan sat with the elder's words for a long time. The torches burned lower. The ship hummed quietly around them. Finally, he rose. Thank you, elder. Go to her, Serac said, before your fear swallows you again. Yuna was sitting on the observation deck when she heard the footsteps. She had come here every evening since sending the letter, watching the stars and wondering if Vortan had read her words. The footsteps were heavy and familiar. Her heart began to race. She turned and saw him standing at the entrance. He looked uncertain, which was strange for such a massive being. His 4 arms were pressed close to his body. His golden eyes were fixed on her. Vortan, she said softly. I read your letter, he replied. I read it many times. And? He walked closer, his footsteps shaking the floor. But he moved slowly, carefully, the way she had seen him move through the garden. When he reached her, he lowered himself to the ground. He sat beside her on the cold metal floor, his massive body filling the space. I spoke with Elder Serac, he said. He told me about our ancestors, about who we were before the wars. The builders and artists. Yes, Vortan turned to look at her. He said perhaps you see what we used to be, what we could be again. Yuna smiled. I see what you are right now, Vortan. And what you are is gentle and curious and kind. The warrior is just one part of you. It is not all of you. No one has ever said such things to me. Then let me be the first. She reached out her hand. It was so small compared to his. A tiny thing, fragile and soft. But she offered it without hesitation. Vortan stared at her hand. In his entire life, no one had ever reached out to him willingly. No one had ever wanted to touch him without violence. His own hand trembled as he lifted it. His clawed fingers closed around her hand gently. Her skin was warm against his scales. She did not flinch. She did not pull away. She simply held on. I do not understand these feelings, Vortan admitted. They are strange and frightening. That is okay, Yuna said. You do not have to understand them all at once. We can learn together. You would do that? You would be patient with a creature who does not know how to feel? Yuna squeezed his massive hand. You already know how to feel, Vortan. You have just been taught to hide it. Let me help you remember. They sat together on the observation deck, hand in hand, watching the stars move slowly across the void. Neither of them spoke for a long time. They did not need to. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with understanding instead of fear. Finally, Vortan said, In my language, we do not have a word for adoration, but we have a word that means to honor something precious, to protect it with your life. That word is Velthan. When I look at you, Yuna, I feel Velthan. Tears formed in Yuna's eyes. That is beautiful. You are beautiful, Vortan said. I did not know such a thing was possible, but you have shown me. Yuna leaned against his massive arm. His scales were warm and rough against her cheek. She felt safe in a way she had never felt before. Then let me call you something else, she said. Not just warrior, not just Vortan. Let me call you friend. A sound came from Vortan's chest, deep and rumbling. Yuna realized it was something like a purr, something like contentment. Friend, he repeated, as if testing the word. Yes. I would like that. They stayed on the observation deck until the station's artificial dawn began to brighten the walls. They talked about small things and large things. They shared stories from their different worlds, and slowly, carefully, a bond began to form between them. A bond that nothing in the universe would be able to break. Then an alarm shattered the peaceful silence. Red lights began flashing across the station. A voice echoed through the corridors, urgent and afraid. Emergency alert! All personnel report to safe zones. Unknown ships detected. We are under attack. Vortan was on his feet in an instant, his warrior instincts taking over. But his first thought was not of battle. His first thought was of Yuna. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice hard as iron. "I will not let anything harm you." And together, they ran toward the chaos. The station shook as another explosion rocked the outer hull. Smoke poured through the corridors. Alarms screamed from every direction. People ran past in panic, their faces twisted with fear. Yuna stayed close to Vortan as they moved through the chaos. His massive body shielded her from the pushing crowds. His golden eyes scanned every corridor, every doorway, searching for threats. "What is happening?" Yuna asked. "Raiders," Vortan growled. "I recognize their ship signatures. They are called the Scourge. They attack stations and ships, steal everything valuable, and leave no survivors." A cold fear gripped Yuna's heart. "The peace talks. They must want to stop them. Or they simply want to cause destruction. The Scourge cares nothing for politics. They care only for blood and profit." They reached a junction where corridors split in 4 directions. Vortan paused, listening. His nostrils flared as he took in the scents of smoke and fear. "The safe zones are to the left," he said. "You should go there." "What about you?" "I am a warrior. I will fight." Yuna grabbed his arm. Her small fingers could barely wrap around his massive wrist. "Vortan, please, be careful." He looked down at her with those golden eyes. For a moment, the warrior mask slipped away, and she saw the gentle soul beneath. "I have something precious to protect now," he said softly. "I will not fall easily." Then he was gone, running toward the sounds of battle with thunderous steps. Yuna watched him disappear. Every part of her wanted to follow him, to stay by his side. But she knew she would only slow him down in a fight. She was a scientist, not a soldier. She turned and ran toward the safe zone. But she did not get far. A section of the corridor ahead had collapsed. Debris blocked the path completely. Yuna could hear voices on the other side, people calling for help. She turned to find another route and nearly ran into a group of terrified civilians. There were about 20 of them. Workers, scientists, families with children. They had been fleeing toward the safe zone when the collapse trapped them. "Is there another way?" a man asked desperately. Yuna thought quickly. She had studied the station's layout for her work. "Yes. There is a maintenance corridor that connects to the lower levels. Follow me." She led the group through narrow passages and emergency stairwells. The station continued to shake around them. More explosions echoed in the distance. But Yuna kept moving, kept guiding, kept her voice calm even when her heart was racing. They were almost to the safe zone when the raiders found them. 3 of them appeared at the end of the corridor. They were humanoid, but covered in black armor that made them look like insects. Their faces were hidden behind dark visors. They carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. The civilians screamed, children cried. Everyone pressed back against the walls, trying to get as far from the raiders as possible. But Yuna stepped forward. "Let these people pass," she said, her voice steady. "They are not fighters. They are not threats to you." The lead raider laughed. It was an ugly sound, mechanical and cold. "All flesh is profit, little creature. These ones will sell well in the slave markets. I will not let you take them." The raider raised his weapon. "Then you will die first." Yuna did not close her eyes. She did not run. She thought of Vortan, of his golden eyes and gentle heart. She thought of everything they had shared, and everything they might never have the chance to share. Then the wall exploded. Vortan came through the metal like it was paper. His scales were scorched with burns and cuts, but his eyes blazed with fury. He roared, a sound so loud that the raiders stumbled backward. It was a sound of pure rage, of a predator protecting what was precious to him. He fell upon the raiders like a storm. Yuna had seen recordings of Kelvari in battle. She had read reports of their devastating combat abilities, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. Vortan moved faster than something his size should be able to move. His 4 arms struck from different angles at once. He grabbed one raider and threw him through the ceiling. He caught another's weapon and bent it in half before tossing the raider aside. The third tried to run, but Vortan's hand closed around him and lifted him off the ground. "You threatened her," Vortan growled, his voice shaking the walls. "You dared to threaten her." The raider squirmed helplessly in his grip. "Please, mercy." Vortan looked at Yuna. Their eyes met across the smoke-filled corridor. She saw the warrior in him, fierce and terrible. But she also saw the question in his gaze, the silent plea for guidance. "Let him live," Yuna said quietly. "Show them that we are better than they are." Vortan held the raider for a long moment. His grip tightened. The raider whimpered. Then slowly, Vortan lowered his arm and dropped the raider to the floor. "Go," Vortan commanded. "Tell your masters what happens when they attack places under Kelvari protection. Tell them about the warrior who showed mercy, and tell them that if they ever return, there will be no mercy the second time." The raider scrambled away, disappearing into the smoke. Vortan turned back to Yuna. His fierce expression softened. He limped toward her, and she saw the injuries he had sustained. Burns covered his chest. Deep cuts ran across his arms. Blue blood dripped from a wound in his side. "Are you hurt?" he asked, and his voice was gentle despite the pain he must have felt. "I am fine, but you—" Yuna reached up toward his wounds. "Vortan, you are injured badly. I will survive. I have survived worse." The civilians began to move again, hurrying toward the safe zone. Many of them looked at Vortan with wide eyes, but now there was something different in their expressions, not just fear. There was also wonder. There was gratitude. A small girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, the big monster saved us." "He is not a monster," Yuna said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He is a guardian." Vortan looked at her with something like surprise, like hope, like he could not quite believe what he was hearing. Then another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. Vortan stumbled. Yuna caught his arm, though she could barely support his weight. "More raiders," he said through gritted teeth. "They are pushing deeper into the station." "Can you fight?" "I can always fight." But Yuna could see the truth. He was weakening. His blue blood was pooling on the floor. His breaths were coming in short, painful gasps. "We need to get you to the medical bay," she said. "There is no time. The raiders will—" "Vortan." Yuna grabbed his face between her hands, forcing him to look at her. "You cannot protect anyone if you are dead. Let me help you. Please." He stared into her eyes. The sounds of battle echoed around them. Smoke filled the air. But for a moment, there was only the two of them. "You ask me to trust you with my life," he said. "Yes, the same way I trusted you with mine." A long silence stretched between them. Then Vortan nodded slowly. "Lead the way, little one. I will follow." Yuna took his hand and began to guide him toward the medical bay. Behind them, the battle raged on. Ahead, an uncertain future waited. But in that moment, holding the hand of the giant warrior who had risked everything to save her, Yuna felt no fear. only love, and a fierce determination to save him the same way he had saved her. The medical bay was chaos. Injured people filled every bed. Doctors and nurses rushed between patients, their faces tight with exhaustion. The battle outside was ending, but the consequences would last much longer. When Yuna arrived supporting Vortan, everyone stopped and stared. A human woman, barely reaching his knee, was holding up an 8-meter Kelvari warrior. She was straining under his weight. Her face was red with effort, but she would not let go. "Help him," she demanded. "Please, he is badly hurt." The doctors exchanged uncertain looks. One of them, an older man with gray hair, stepped forward. We do not know how to treat Kelvari. Their biology is completely different from anything we have studied." "Then I will tell you what to do." Yuna guided Vortan to the largest bed in the room, designed for treating large species. Even so, his legs hung off the end. "I am a xenobiologist. I have been studying Kelvari physiology for the past week. Get me the surgical tools and a plasma welder. Now." Her voice left no room for argument. The doctors obeyed. For the next 3 hours, Yuna worked to save Vortan's life. His wounds were severe. The blue blood of his kind did not clot the same way human blood did. His organs were in different places than expected. Every step was a challenge, but Yuna refused to give up. She guided the doctors through each procedure. She showed them how to seal his wounds with the plasma welder. She identified which internal organs needed repair and which could heal on their own. Her hands were covered in blue blood. Her body ached with exhaustion, but she kept working. Sometime during the surgery, Vortan lost consciousness. His great body went limp on the bed. His golden eyes closed. For a terrible moment, Yuna thought she had lost him. Then she saw his chest still rising and falling, slow and steady. He was alive. He was fighting. She pressed her forehead against his arm. "Stay with me," she whispered. "You promised to protect something precious. You cannot do that if you are gone." The surgery was successful, but Vortan did not wake up. Days passed. The battle was over. The raiders had been driven away by the combined forces of the station security and the Kelvari warriors. The peace talks would continue. The galaxy would keep turning. But Yuna did not care about any of that. She stayed by Vortan's side, refusing to leave even when others told her she needed rest. She talked to him while he slept. She told him stories about Earth, about her childhood in a small town near the ocean. She told him about the first time she saw the stars through a telescope and knew she wanted to explore them. She told him about her parents, who had supported her dreams even when others said she was foolish. "My mother used to say that the heart knows things the mind cannot understand," Yuna said, holding his massive hand between both of hers. "I never really believed her until I met you. But now I understand. My heart knew you were special from the first moment I saw you. It knew you were not a monster. It knew you were exactly what I had been looking for." She paused, tears forming in her eyes. "Please wake up, Vortan. Please come back to me." The other Kelvari warriors came to visit their fallen comrade. They stood at the entrance to the medical bay, their massive forms filling the doorway. They watched as the tiny human sat beside their mightiest warrior, holding his hand and talking softly. Krath, the warrior with copper eyes, spoke first. "She has not left his side." "No," Elder Serac agreed. He had come from the ship to see Vortan. His ancient eyes were fixed on Yuna with something like wonder. "She remains. Why? He is not her kind. He is not her blood. Why would she sacrifice her comfort for him?" "Because she loves him." The warriors shifted uncomfortably. Love was not a word they used. It was not a concept they understood, but watching the small human woman tend to their brother, they began to glimpse something they had forgotten. Is this what we lost? Krath asked quietly. Is this what our ancestors had? Yes, Serac replied, and perhaps this human can help us remember. On the 6th day, Yuna was telling Vortan about the ocean. She described the sound of waves against the shore. She described the smell of salt in the air. She described the feeling of sand between her toes. I would like to show it to you someday, she said. Earth is very different from your world. There is so much water, so much green. I think you would find it beautiful. She fell silent, resting her head on the edge of his bed. Her eyes were heavy. She had not slept properly in days. The exhaustion was finally catching up to her. Just as her eyes began to close, she felt something move beneath her cheek, a finger, twitching. Her eyes flew open. Vortan's golden eyes were looking at her. They were dim and tired, but they were open. They were alive. Yuna, he said. His voice was rough and weak, but it was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. Tears streamed down her face. You are awake. You are finally awake. I heard you. His massive hand moved slowly, reaching for her. I heard everything you said. The stories, the memories, your voice was like a light in the darkness. It guided me back. I was so afraid. Yuna pressed her face into his hand. I thought I might lose you. You cannot lose me now, not after everything. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You taught me what adoration means. Did you think I would leave before I had a chance to adore you in return? Yuna laughed through her tears. You impossible warrior. You're impossible warrior. The doctors came running when they heard voices. They could not believe their patient was awake. Kelvari, who suffered injuries this severe, usually did not survive. But somehow, Vortan had fought his way back. Elder Serac approached the bed. He looked at Vortan with something like pride. You have survived what would have killed most of our kind. What gave you the strength? Vortan did not look at the elder. He kept his eyes fixed on Yuna. She did, he said simply. She gave me something worth surviving for? The elder nodded slowly. He turned to address the other warriors who had gathered at the door. Remember this moment, Serac commanded. Remember what a human's love can do. Remember that there are powers in this universe greater than strength or weapons. We came here for peace talks, but perhaps we have found something more valuable. Perhaps we have found a path back to who we used to be. The warriors bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Yuna did not care about the warriors or the peace talks or the lessons being learned. She only cared about the golden eyes looking at her with such warmth, such gratitude, such love. Yuna, Vortan said softly. Yes? I understand now. What adoration means. What it feels like. He lifted her hand and pressed it against his chest, where his heart beat strong and steady. Teach me more. Teach me everything. Yuna smiled through her tears. We have all the time in the universe. Outside the medical bay, the station was rebuilding. The damage from the attack would take months to repair, but inside that small room, something far more important was being constructed. A bridge between two worlds, a bond between two hearts, a love that would change everything, and it was only just beginning. 3 months had passed since the attack on Unity Station. The peace talks had been successful. The Kelvari had signed treaties with 12 different species. For the first time in 3 centuries, the galaxy was moving toward true cooperation instead of fear. But for Yuna, the greatest success had nothing to do with politics. She stood in the garden dome, surrounded by flowers from 100 worlds. Artificial sunlight warmed her skin. The fountain bubbled peacefully behind her. This was the place where everything had changed. This was the place where Vortan had asked his question, and she had given her answer. Now it was time for him to give his. Heavy footsteps approached from behind. Yuna smiled but did not turn around. She would know those footsteps anywhere. "You asked me to meet you here," Vortan said. His voice was strong again, fully recovered from his injuries. "Is something wrong?" "No." Yuna finally turned to face him. "Everything is right. For the first time in my life, everything is exactly right." Vortan looked different now. He still stood 8 meters tall. He still had scales like armor and 4 powerful arms. But there was a softness in his golden eyes that had not been there before. A peace that came from finally being seen and accepted. "The delegation leaves tomorrow," he said. "The peace talks are finished. We return to our homeworld." "I know. Vortan paused. His 4 hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. He seemed nervous, which was strange for someone so powerful. "I do not know how to say what I wish to say. We Kelvari are not skilled with words of the heart." "Then say it simply," Yuna encouraged. "The same way I did." Vortan knelt before her. Even kneeling, he towered over her, but the gesture brought their eyes closer to the same level. It made them feel like equals instead of a giant and a small creature. "When we first met, I asked if you were afraid of me," Vortan began. "You said no. You said you adored me. At the time, I did not understand. I could not believe that anyone would feel such a thing for a creature like me. And now I understand. Because I feel the same way about you." He reached out and took her hand in his, gentle as always. "You showed me what I could be. You helped me remember who my people used to be. You gave me something I thought was impossible." "What is that?" "Hope." His golden eyes shone with emotion. "For 300 years I believed I was nothing but a weapon, a monster to be feared and used, but you looked at me and saw something more. You saw beauty where others saw horror. You saw gentleness where others saw violence. You saw a heart where others saw only scales and claws." Tears formed in Yuna's eyes. "Vortan, let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. "Among my people, when a warrior wishes to pledge himself to another, he speaks words of Velthan, of honoring something precious, of promising to protect it with his life. These words are sacred. They are not spoken lightly." The garden was silent except for the fountain. Even the artificial birds seemed to have stopped singing. "Yuna," Vortan said, his voice trembling slightly, "I speak words of Velthan to you. I honor you as the most precious thing in my universe. I promise to protect you with every breath in my body. I promise to learn how to love as your people love. I promise to spend every remaining day of my existence trying to be worthy of the adoration you have given me." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "Come with me. Come to my homeworld. Not as a diplomat or a scientist. Come as something more. Come as my Veltan, my heart, my home." Yuna was crying openly now, but her tears were not sad. They were the tears of someone whose deepest wishes were finally coming true. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Vortan. I will come with you." He pulled her close, lifting her gently in his massive arms. She felt surrounded by warmth and strength. She felt safer than she had ever felt in her life. "I adore you, Yuna," Vortan whispered against her hair. "I finally understand what those words mean. I adore every part of you, your courage, your kindness, your ability to see beauty in things others fear. You have changed me forever." "You have changed me too," she replied. "I was always searching for something out in the stars. I thought it was knowledge or discovery. But really, I was searching for you. I just did not know it yet." They held each other in the garden as the artificial sun began to set. The flowers closed their petals for the night. The stars appeared on the dome walls, millions of points of light representing millions of worlds. One of those worlds was about to become Yuna's new home. The epilogue writes itself in years rather than days. 5 years later, Yuna stood on the surface of the Kelvari homeworld. The sky was gray with clouds from distant mountains. The ground beneath her feet was rocky and hard. It was nothing like Earth. Nothing like the soft green hills of her childhood. But it was beautiful in its own way. And it was home. Beside her stood Vortan. He was older now, with a few silver scales mixing with the gray. But his eyes still burned with the same golden light, and they still looked at her with the same adoration as the day they first met. Around them stood a crowd of Kelvari, warriors and their families, elders and children. They had gathered to witness something that had not happened in 3,000 years. The opening of the first cultural exchange center. It was Yuna's creation, a place where Kelvari could learn about other species. A place where they could study art and music and poetry. A place where they could remember who they used to be before the wars changed them. Elder Serac, even older now but still standing tall, addressed the crowd. For centuries, we forgot how to create beauty. We forgot how to feel without shame. We forgot how to love. But one small human reminded us of everything we had lost. She showed us that strength and gentleness can exist together, that a warrior can also have a gentle heart. He turned to Vortan. And this warrior learned that lesson better than anyone. He who was once called the Terror of 12 Systems is now known by a different name, a name that our ancestors would have been proud of. The crowd spoke together, their deep voices shaking the ground. Vortan, the guardian who learned to love. Vortan bowed his head in acceptance of the honor. Then he looked down at Yuna and smiled. "This is your doing," he said. "All of it." "No," she replied. "This is what happens when two people choose to understand each other instead of fear each other. This is what happens when we are brave enough to say what we feel." Vortan lifted her in his arms, holding her against his chest. The crowd watched, and for the first time, there was no fear in their eyes, only wonder, only hope. "Are you happy?" Vortan asked her. "Is this the life you wanted?" Yuna looked at the gray sky and the rocky ground. She looked at the massive warriors surrounding her, these creatures she had come to love as family. She looked at the cultural center, the beginning of something that would change an entire civilization. Then she looked into Vortan's golden eyes, the eyes that saw her as clearly as she saw him. "I have never been happier," she said, "because I have you, and you have me, and together we have forever." The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in months. Light spilled across the Kelvari homeworld, warm and golden. It touched Yuna's face as Vortan held her close. In a galaxy that had taught him only how to destroy, one small human had shown him how to cherish. And that made all the difference.